the supply and demand around jobs and available workers. What's the reality of this gap between those? Where are those jobs? Where are the greatest needs for skilled workers?
Yeah, Sherrell, at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of the emphasis was on three big industries: logistics, healthcare, and agriculture. As the pandemic has gone on, we've seen healthcare continues to be a really important industry for job placement, but it's also been accompanied by needs in the tech space and customer service and sales. And so I think the conversation you just had about digital skills and digital literacy is directly relevant to it, but we can't talk about this only in terms of skills, because skills is just one leg of the stool. We also have to talk about the need for opportunity and then the need for good quality jobs. So in the last segment, you talked about opportunity in terms of the gender inequality. In the US, we have looked at this from the lens of racial and economic justice. And how do we make sure that the way that we're feeding people into better jobs is equitable? There are 30 million Americans right now who have the skills to be in jobs that pay 70% higher than what they're making. But oftentimes the barriers to opportunity may not be direct discrimination, but it's in the ways that we promote jobs. It's in the ways that we advertise them. Why do we put requirements for bachelor's degrees when that isn't necessarily relevant to the job? And finally, the third leg of the stool is the jobs themselves. One of the challenges we're really having to deal with right now is that there just aren't enough jobs for the number of people who are unemployed. During the Great Depression, the federal government stepped up and said, we will create 8 million jobs for people who are currently displaced or furloughed. But in this situation, I think one of the places we can look is empowering small and micro businesses. And this is something that we at the Mastercard Center for Inclusive Growth have been doing for several years, which is working globally to empower micro and small businesses to become revenue creators and job creators. We believe that if you invest in the digitization of small businesses, it makes them more productive, more efficient, more profitable, and that leads to better jobs.
Parag, I love that you brought in the conversation on micro entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship as another way for us to get this idea of future of work and connectivity as part of the conversation on how we put people back to work. And Lisa, I want to jump in with you here. Let's talk about reskilling, really retraining an available workforce to meet some of these demands. Where do we begin? How is this going to get accomplished?
Sure. So we work with a lot of enterprises who actually have the opposite problem of what's being described, which is they have the jobs. What they're missing are people with the digital skills to fill those jobs. And so when employers come to us to talk about their needs and their goals for workforce reskilling, they're often asking us about the training itself. When should they consider reskilling initiatives? What content or curriculum should they focus on? What's the investment and payback horizon, and so on? And those are important questions because workforce reskilling is like any other strategic business initiative. It should be thoughtfully planned and executed and the outcomes tracked. But from our perspective, successful learning and successful reskilling really begins with a certain mindset. And the right mindset is one that recognizes the value of workers and the importance of investing in their continuous learning, not just as a path to short-term economic benefits for the business, although it can certainly deliver those, but really as a way of keeping the entire organization relevant, competitive, and attractive to talent over the long haul. And that kind of perspective really has to come from the very, very top.